I used AI to set up a fantasy pro wrestling tournament and give me results with no bias as to who would win. So with that in mind, and with a nod to ChatGPT, here is the tournament to crown a 50 states champion using mostly 1980s wrestlers. Add a little explanation here. Since we center on pro wrestling history with a strong flavor from the 1980s, I wanted to make it a 1980s wrestler tournament with one wrestler that was born in every state in the United States to give us 50 wrestlers to start. Now, this was all using real birthplaces, not how they were typically announced in the ring. While states like Minnesota and Texas offer a plethora of pro wrestlers to choose from, other states like Maine and Wyoming really don't leave much. So I had to broaden that criteria to fill out the tournament. For example, Alaska didn't have anybody from the 1980s, so I stepped into the 1990s and went with Kenny Chaos, who you might remember from WCW in the mid to late 1990s. For Montana, I went the other way and used Smasher Sloan, who had his final match in 1972, though he did face some wrestlers that went on to some prominence in the 80s, like Scott Casey and Bob Orton Jr. Also, there is the curious case of New Mexico. There really haven't been many pro wrestlers born in New Mexico. A couple of sources say Ricky Romero was born there, but most sources say he was born in California. I think California is actually correct, but with nothing else to go on, I went with the minority of sources and used Romero for New Mexico. Now, there are others I'll touch on as we move along. I also avoided using the biggest stars. I ran into something of a test tournament, and even with AI, I think there will be some bias when it comes to the most notable names. If Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan are in the tournament, take a wild guess as to who will be in the final match. It's a fantasy tournament, so all the wrestlers appearing are in their prime, but I also tried to keep it as realistic as I could. I set the tournament up for 3 different locations and randomly selected specific matchups for each round, but tried to lay out the order of the matches in a realistic way. What better place to have the first round of 25 matches over 2 nights than in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., at Capital One Arena. A massive crowd with a mix of old school and modern fans packed the arena, as well as a lot of media curious about this neutral ground tournament. I thought it was only right to start the tournament with a matchup of 2 non-80s wrestlers, Scotty 2 Hotty representing Maine, and Pierre Vachon representing Vermont. Vachon dominates the match, but Scotty steals the win with a surprise roll-up at the 8-minute and 12-second mark. Scotty moves on. Next, Ron Bass representing Arkansas faces Garrett Bischoff representing Wyoming. Yeah, Bischoff was literally the only choice for Wyoming I could find. Bischoff is clearly overwhelmed, but Bass plays a little cat and mouse to give the fans their money's worth. Bass wins with a running power slam in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Ricky Romero, representing New Mexico, takes on dangerous Danny Davis, representing New Hampshire. Davis has to bend a roll or two, but holds his own against the far more experienced Romero. Ricky's technical skills counter Davis's shortcuts, and he wins in 10 minutes and 5 seconds. Rick Rude, representing Minnesota, takes on Dennis Kozlowski, representing South Dakota. Now, Kozlowski didn't have much of a pro wrestling career, but he had an impressive amateur career. Rude mocks Kozlowski at first, but starts taking things more seriously when Dennis hits him with a series of suplexes. Rude finally hits the Rude Awakening to win the match at the 9-minute and 33-second mark, drawing boos as he flexed over Kozlowski before pinning him. Larry Zbyszko, representing Illinois, takes on Kenny Chaos, representing Alaska. Chaos has Larry befuddled at first with his speed and aggression, but the crafty Zbyszko slows down the pace and makes the fans angry, stalling outside the ring. At the 11-minute and 20-second mark, Zbyszko pins Chaos. Zbyszko had his feet on the ropes for leverage, but the referee didn't see it. Next, Gary Albright, representing Rhode Island, takes on David Von Erich, representing Texas. This turned out to be one of the night's best matches, with Albright using brutal suplexes and raw power, while David fought back from underneath with fiery comebacks. The DC crowd heavily supported David as he caught Albright by surprise with the backslide to take the win. Terry Funk, representing Indiana, then takes on Art Cruz, representing Kansas. A lot of people may not know Funk was not born in Texas, but in Hammond, Indiana. Cruz's amateur background gave him a chance, but drawing Funk in the first round was something he couldn't prepare for. Funk hit the ring like a wild man, throwing chairs and attacking Cruz with insanity. Cruz survives 12 minutes and 16 seconds before Funk suddenly turns to wrestling maneuvers and makes him submit with a spinning toe hold. And next up, Chris Colt, representing Idaho, faces Bobby Eaton, representing Alabama. Eaton puts on a showcase of timing and smooth offense. Colt's charisma comes through to the fans, and his unpredictability keeps it from being a squash, but Eaton is simply too polished bell to bell and takes the win in 13 minutes and 2 seconds. We have what might be considered the first upset of the tournament. Billy Kidman, representing Connecticut, takes on Tommy Rich, representing Tennessee. Rich wrestles emotionally and keeps Kidman grounded early, but Kidman's speed and agility eventually takes over. Kidman wins with the shooting star press at the 11 minute and 48 second mark. The crowd gave this match a standing ovation. Thunderbolt Patterson, representing Iowa, then takes on Tony Atlas, representing Virginia. This turns into a power struggle with both men trying to outmuscle the other. The crowd slowly starts to favor Patterson in the match. Patterson hits Atlas with a flying shoulder tackle to win it in 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Dr. Death Steve Williams, representing Colorado, then takes on King Kong Bundy, representing New Jersey. The crowd gets really excited for this one, treating it like a heavyweight prize fight. The deceptively quick Bundy hits Williams early with the avalanche in the corner, but Williams slowly breaks him down using stiff strikes and tackles. Williams hits Bundy with the Oklahoma Stampede to take the win in 13 minutes and 37 seconds. I guess that would be the Colorado Stampede for the purposes of this tournament. Next, Ernie Ladd, representing Louisiana, takes on Ted DiBiase, representing Nebraska. Ladd dominated when he had momentum, but DiBiase goes after Ladd's legs to counter his size advantage. Once Ladd was off his feet, it was just a matter of time. DiBiase takes the win with a figure 4 leg lock at 15 minutes and 11 seconds. To end Night 1, Mr. Wrestling 2, representing South Carolina, takes on Arn Anderson, representing Georgia. This was a gritty, old-school technical brawl that feels completely different from the other matches on the card. Both men target the other's body with clinical precision. Mr. Wrestling 2 goes for $1 million knee lift late in the match, but Anderson counters and puts 2 on the mat. Arn then hits the DDT to take the win at 16 minutes and 4 seconds. Despite the more ruthless Anderson winning, the crowd gave this match a standing ovation. Alright, with those winners in the books, we move on to Night 2 to finish out the first round. Night 2 feels bigger, louder, and more dangerous according to ChatGPT. The crowd is especially electric. The night opens with Buddy Rose, representing Nevada, taking on Bobby Fulton, representing Ohio. Fulton keeps Rose off balance early with non-stop energy, using quick drop kicks and arm drags. Rose turns to dirty tactics to gain momentum, pinning Fulton with an inside cradle and a handful of tights at 12 minutes and 14 seconds. Next, Brickhouse Brown, representing Delaware, takes on Don Morocco, representing Hawaii. Brown fires up the crowd early, but Morocco's size and calm brutality slowly takes over. Morocco hits a tombstone piledriver and pins Brown at 9 minutes and 51 seconds. Next, Red Bastien, representing North Dakota, takes on Ken Patera, representing Oregon. Bastien's speed helped him shock the crowd with several near pins early, but Patera's terrifying strength overpowered Red. Patera locks in the full Nelson at the 10 minute and 26 second mark to take the win. Smasher Sloan, representing Montana, and Big John Studd, representing Pennsylvania, gives us our only real squash of the night. Studd dominates from the opening bell, tossing Sloan around like a rag doll. After a backbreaker, Studd uses a single finger to pin Sloan at 4 minutes and 58 seconds. Next, Don Leo Jonathan, representing Utah, takes on Kevin Sullivan, representing Massachusetts. Sullivan tries some psychological warfare before the match, staring into a camera at ringside and mutters about destiny and violence. Jonathan is not intimidated and wrestles a disciplined, punishing match. Jonathan puts Sullivan in the airplane spin before slamming him to the mat to gain the pin at 13 minutes and 20 seconds. The crowd is unsettled when Sullivan sits in the ring laughing after the match. Junkyard Dog, representing North Carolina, and The Crusher, representing Wisconsin, turns into a real crowd pleaser. Neither man cared anything about finesse as they trade punches, headbutts, and stomps as fans cheered for both. JYD finally comes away with the victory after a power slam at the 11-minute and 42-second mark. Next, Kamala the Ugandan Giant, representing not Uganda but Mississippi, takes on Bobby Jaggers, representing Washington State. The crowd falls carefully silent as Kamala makes his entrance. Jaggers gets some offense in early, but ultimately Kamala overpowers him with savage attacks, ending with a splash to pin Jaggers at 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Ray Stevens, representing West Virginia, then takes on Michael Hayes, representing Florida. Hayes constantly mouths off as Steven counters everything in this battle of showmanship and ring IQ. Stevens takes the win with a knee off the top rope at 14 minutes and 2 seconds, with Hayes throwing a fit to the referee after the loss. Next, Hillbilly Jim, representing Kentucky, takes on Big Scott Hall, representing Maryland. The crowd initially gets behind the lovable Hillbilly, but Hall slowly takes over with effortless athleticism. Hall takes the victory with a fallaway slam after 8 minutes and 47 seconds. In a first-round battle of West Coast and East Coast, Jim Neidhart, representing California, takes on Lex Luger, representing New York. A powerhouse showcase, Neidhart pushes Luger harder than expected with raw intensity and unpredictability. Luger finally catches Neidhart with a power slam before putting him in the torture rack to take the win in 12 minutes and 33 seconds. In one of the most stylistically fascinating matches of the tournament, superstar Billy Graham, representing Arizona, takes on Jack Briscoe, representing Oklahoma. Graham tried to overpower and intimidate Briscoe, but Jack stays composed and centers his attack on holds and counters. After Graham misses a big elbow drop, Briscoe catches the superstar in a small package to take the win in 17 minutes and 18 seconds. The crowd applauds both men after the match. The final match of Night 2 and the first round gives us Bruiser Brody, representing Michigan, and Nick Bockwinkel, representing Missouri. This was controlled chaos versus technical precision. Bockwinkel was brilliant early, avoiding Brody's attacks and frustrating him with counters. Brody turned the match into a fight on the outside of the ring as fans scattered when the action spilled into the crowd. Bockwinkel finally got things back in the ring and almost put Brody out with a sleeper, but Brody powered out and finished the 4-time AWA World Champion with a big boot and a running knee drop to win in 18 minutes and 49 seconds. We wrapped things up in Washington, D.C., giving the wrestlers a week to prepare and hold the second round at T-Mobile Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City is the unofficial birthplace of the National Wrestling Alliance, and fans have always enjoyed hard-hitting brawlers and technical expertise. With 25 wrestlers left, that means one wrestler will draw a bye and automatically make it to the third round. Terry Funk drew the bye, so he will not appear on this card, but will be in round 3. Funk appears during the broadcast anyway, cutting a scathing promo while holding a branding iron and accusing the tournament committee of fearing him. With Funk safely out of the picture, we move on to the first match of round 2. Rick Rude of Minnesota takes on Scotty 2 Hotty from Maine. Scotty keeps Rude off balance early with his quickness, getting the crowd on his side and even knocking Rude out of the ring with a series of drop kicks. When Rude finally got his hands on Scotty, he took out his frustrations with a series of savage backbreakers. With Scotty slowed down, Rick hit the Rude Awakening to take the win in 10 minutes and 17 seconds. Next, it's speed versus strength once again, as Ken Patera from Oregon takes on Billy Kidman from Connecticut. Kidman repeatedly escapes Patera's grasp and nearly steals the match with his aerial attack. After hitting a shooting star press, Patera shocks Kidman when he kicks out at 1. Kidman climbs to the top rope and is caught in mid-air by Patera, who manhandles him into a full Nelson to win the match in 11 minutes and 6 seconds. Ray Stevens from West Virginia takes on Big Scott Hall from Maryland next. Hall walks to the ring with confidence, but has to take things more seriously when the wily Stevens counters his offense, catching Hall in a sleeper, only for Hall to be saved by reaching the ropes. Hall manages to overpower Stevens and scores the pinfall victory in 13 minutes and 11 seconds. In tonight's most technical contest, Ricky Romero from New Mexico takes on Arn Anderson from Georgia. Both men attack each other with precision, captivating the old-school fans in the crowd. After a long battle with offense and counters, Anderson finally hits a spinebuster and immediately follows that with a DDT to take the victory in 16 minutes and 28 seconds. Next, Don Leo Jonathan from Utah takes on Dr. Death Steve Williams from Colorado. The brutal heavyweight collision gets fans pumped up. Jonathan's size and technique create major problems for Williams early on, but Dr. Death gradually overwhelms him. The crowd gasps when Williams hits Jonathan with an Oklahoma Stampede that looks like it almost folds him in half. Williams takes the victory in 14 minutes and 33 seconds. Buddy Rhodes from Nevada then takes on Junkyard Dog from North Carolina. The Kansas City crowd is solidly behind JYD as Rhodes tried every dirty trick in the book to counter Dog's power. Rose even tried to leave the arena midway through the match, but is chased back to the ring by Thunderbolt Patterson and David Von Erich coming from the back. Dog wins the match with a power slam at 8 minutes and 59 seconds. Next, Ron Bass from Arkansas takes on Lex Luger from New York. This turns into a rugged brawl with the action spilling outside the ring where Bass busts Luger open. Bass does surprisingly well, matching Luger's strength, but Luger's stamina eventually makes the difference, despite bleeding from the head. Luger hits Bass with a running power slam to win the match in 12 minutes and 2 seconds. And Kamala the Ugandan Giant from Mississippi then faces Don Morocco from Hawaii. Morocco manages to avoid Kamala's direct attacks at first, but Kamala's unpredictable offense slowly wears Morocco down. Morocco has one last burst of offense, but that is stopped in its tracks when Kamala lets out a sudden scream and sends shivers up the spines of the crowd. Kamala takes Morocco down and hits him with a splash to win the match in 9 minutes and 14 seconds. Bobby Eaton from Alabama then takes on Larry Zbyszko from Illinois. Eaton's clean execution frustrates Zbyszko, who constantly steps out of the ring and complains to the referee. The match builds beautifully as Eaton repeatedly gets close to pinning Zbyszko before Larry finds another escape. Finally, Eaton pins Zbyszko in the center of the ring after coming off the top rope, winning the match in 15 minutes and 7 seconds and leading to the fans exploding in cheers. Big John Studd from Pennsylvania then takes on Thunderbolt Patterson from Iowa. The crowd is solidly behind the charismatic Patterson, but Studd's size proves to be too much for him. Patterson does get a near fall late in the match, but Studd kicks out before hitting Patterson with a power slam to win in 10 minutes and 41 seconds. Bruiser Brody from Michigan and Ted DiBiase from Nebraska provide chaos in the next match. Starting out like a war from the opening bell, DiBiase goes after Brody's legs to try and take the big man off his feet. Brody answers with violent stomps and clubbing DiBiase over the head. Eventually, both men tumble out of the ring where they both end up busted open. Fans have to move back as they get close to the crowd after going after each other with metal chairs. Unable to get the men back in the ring, the referee calls for the bell and declares the match a double countout after 17 minutes and 52 seconds. DiBiase and Brody continue to fight outside the ring until the dressing room's empty, with wrestlers coming out to pull them apart. Both men are eliminated from the tournament. Michigan and Nebraska. The final match of the evening is a Red River shootout between David Von Erich from Texas and Jack Briscoe from Oklahoma. A respectful but highly competitive matchup is largely controlled by Briscoe early on with his mat wrestling. David energizes the crowd with a fiery comeback and some mat wrestling of his own. Late in the match, Briscoe almost pins Von Erich, but David manages to kick out at 2 3/4, drawing a gasp from the crowd. Finally, Von Erich slaps on the Iron Claw, and Yurii Briscoe is pinned at the 19-minute and 21-second mark. The fans give both wrestlers a standing ovation. Von Erich and Briscoe embrace after the match. For the final rounds of the tournament to crown a 50 states champion, we make sure there is no regional bias by taking things outside the United States. The Scotiabank Saddle Dome in Calgary, Alberta, Canada means no U.S. state will host the finals, while also giving a nod of respect to Stampede Wrestling, where many U.S.-born wrestlers cut their teeth early in their career. Thanks to the double countout between Bruiser Brody and Ted DiBiase, there are now an even 12 wrestlers left in the tournament, making 6 matches for the third round. In the first matchup, Arn Anderson of Georgia takes on Junkyard Dog from North Carolina. Anderson immediately goes after Junkyard Dog's knee, hoping to counter Dog's power by taking away what mobility he has. JYD powers through the punishment and almost overwhelms Anderson with sheer power. Eventually, Arn's attacks on Dog's knee take its toll, slowing JYD down to a crawl. Anderson hits a DDT to pin Dog at 14 minutes and 12 seconds as the Calgary crowd boos. Next up, Bobby Eaton of Alabama takes on Colorado's Dr. Death Steve Williams. Eaton starts getting the crowd on his side with one of the bravest performances of the tournament. Using speed to avoid Williams' power moves, Eaton gets several dramatic near falls. Williams survives through sheer toughness, eventually wearing Eaton down with frightening intensity. Hitting the Oklahoma Stampede, Williams pins Eaton after 16 minutes and 33 seconds. Lex Luger of New York takes on Kamala from Mississippi in the next match with a feeling of tension in the air before the match even begins. Luger attempts to keep his distance as he feels Kamala out, but the Ugandan giant repeatedly traps him in the corner and overwhelms him physically. Late in the match, Luger narrowly escapes a Kamala splash and quickly hits the ropes to deliver a devastating clothesline. Showing his sheer strength, Luger picks up Kamala and power slams the giant, giving him the pinfall victory in 10 minutes and 48 seconds. Both Luger and the crowd are stunned when Kamala immediately sits up after the pin. In a battle of the big men, Big Scott Hall from Maryland takes on Big John Studd from Pennsylvania. Having practically called it in through the tournament so far due to his sheer size, Studd finds it harder to intimidate Hall, but does dominate early in the match. Hall slowly chips away with strikes and proves to be a bit quicker than Studd. Finally, with the crowd producing one of the biggest reactions of the round, Hall managed to pick up Studd and deliver a power slam to get the 3 count at 12 minutes and 57 seconds. In a strength versus strength match, Ken Patera of Oregon takes on Rick Rude from Minnesota. Unsure he can match Patera's power, Rude tried to avoid direct strength exchanges with the Olympian. When Patera finally gets his hands on Rude, he punishes him with grinding holds and overpowers him. Rude survives using the ropes, raking the eyes, and evasive tactics. Patera almost puts Rude out with the full Nelson, but Rude manages to force both men into the referee, who is knocked out of the ring, and the hold is broken. With the referee down, Rude hits Patera with a low blow before dragging the ref back into the ring, where he pins Patera for the win at 13 minutes and 44 seconds. In a battle of Texas wrestling legends to end the third round, Terry Funk, representing Indiana, takes on David Von Erich, representing Texas. Funk enters the ring wild-eyed and immediately turns the match into a fight, throwing David out of the ring and going after him with a chair. The Calgary crowd start to rally behind Von Erich as he continually comes back from Funk's attacks and mounts an offense, hitting Funk with a high knee that sends Terry outside the ring. As Funk throws a fit around ringside, Von Erich continually breaks the count to prevent a countout. Finally, David goes outside the ring to bring Funk back in, but the two fight up the entrance ramp and even knock over the broadcast table. Both men hurry to the ring to avoid a countout, but immediately take things back outside the ring, where Funk tried to pile drive David on the floor, David counters and backdrops Funk on the floor before throwing him back in the ring. David applies the Iron Claw and pins Funk to win in 22 minutes and 18 seconds. The crowd give David a thunderous ovation as Funk screams at the referee. During a short break, Missy Hyatt interviews some of the fans in the crowd. David Von Erich has become the emotional favorite, while Steve Williams is looking like the most physically intimidating. Rick Rude is getting the most heat for surviving through shortcuts, while Arn Anderson has impressed fans with his ring intelligence. Scott Hall is also impressing fans with his confidence and composure, while fans think Lex Luger is looking a little exhausted after his match with Kamala. Starting the fourth round, stamina will be important. Only 6 men remain, with each facing at least 2 more opponents in the night, and maybe 3. For the first match of the fourth round, Arn Anderson from Georgia takes on Dr. Death Steve Williams from Colorado. Arn controls the match early, wrestling the smartest match of the tournament as he centers on Williams' neck and left arm to slow down Dr. Death and keep him off balance. For nearly 15 minutes, Anderson controls the pace with precision, but just one opening for Williams was all he needed. When Anderson hit Williams with a spine buster and went for the pin, Williams kicked out at 1, shocking Arn. Anderson then tried for a DDT, but Williams overpowered Arn and turned it into a backdrop suplex. Williams then hit Anderson with the Oklahoma Stampede to get the pinfall victory in 17 minutes and 11 seconds. Williams struggled to get to his feet at the end of the match. In the second match of the fourth round, Lex Luger of New York takes on Big Scott Hall of Maryland. Less of a traditional wrestling match and more of a battle of the bodies, this matchup had the crowd split down the middle. Hall came out with surprising aggression as he went after Luger's head wound from his second round match with Ron Bass, reopening the wound. A bloody Luger countered with bursts of athletic power, sending Hall off his feet. Hall nearly pins Luger late in the match, but Luger manages to get a foot on the rope. When Hall moves to pick up Luger for another hold, Luger surprised him and put him in the torture rack. Hall was forced to submit, giving Luger the win in 15 minutes and 26 seconds. After the match, Luger and Hall stand face to face before shaking hands and taking in cheers from the crowd. In the final match of round 4, Rick Rude of Minnesota takes on David Von Erich of Texas. This match electrifies the crowd before the bell even rings, as Von Erich has become the emotional favorite and Rude the most hated of the tournament. Things start slowly as Rude avoids Von Erich, mocking him and taunting the crowd. When Rude saw his opening, he took control of the match and became aggressive, targeting David's neck and back while constantly taunting the audience. David survives several near falls and rallies the crowd behind him as he mounts a comeback. Late in the match, Rick attempted a Rude awakening, but David slipped away and responded with the Iron Claw to Rude's head. Rude reached the ropes, forcing Von Erich to relinquish the hold. Rude then grabbed Von Erich and threw him out of the ring. As the referee was busy checking on David and beginning the count, Rude removed the pad from the far turnbuckle. When David came back into the ring, he charged Rude, who slipped away, making David hit the exposed turnbuckle with his shoulder. Exhausted and in pain, David was an easy target for Rude when he hit the Rude awakening and won the match at 19 minutes and 2 seconds. The Calgary crowd booed Rude loudly as he walked up the ramp while blowing kisses to the audience. As David left the ring, he received a nice ovation. An extended break to give the wrestlers a rest follows, and it's announced Lex Luger has drawn the all-important bye and automatically advances to the finals. As Ravishing Rick Rude comes to the ring for the semi-final match, he is showered with boos from the Calgary crowd, who then burst into cheers when Dr. Death Steve Williams emerges from the back to begin his walk to the ring. Rude is cautious at first, trying to avoid Williams' direct attacks, circling the Colorado native. Tired of the game, Williams finally rushes forward and pins Rude in the corner, hitting him with repeated shoulder thrusts and forearms. Rude survives the storm, taking control and centering his attack on Williams' neck, the same body part Arn Anderson concentrated on earlier in the night. Every time Williams starts to take control, Rude counters with an eye rake or using the ropes for leverage to maintain a hold until the referee calls for the break. At the 10-minute mark, Rude hits Williams with a perfectly executed Rude Awakening, and thinking he has the match won, taunts the crowd before lazily covering Williams. Dr. Death kicks out at 2 3/4, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Pumped up by the fans, Williams has a burst of energy, hitting Rude with a series of clotheslines and football tackles as Rude desperately tries to regain control. As Williams charges in again, Rude sidesteps and tosses Williams outside the ring. As the referee counts, Rude again goes to the opposite corner and removes the pad from the turnbuckle, as he did in the earlier match against David Von Erich. When Williams climbed back into the ring, Rude pushed him into the corner opposite the exposed turnbuckle and tried to whip Dr. Death across the ring into it. Williams reversed the Irish whip, sending Rude chest first into the exposed turnbuckle. As Rude stumbled back to the center of the ring, Williams scooped him up and delivered an Oklahoma Stampede to get the pin at 18 minutes and 44 seconds. Williams falls to his knees after his arm is raised in victory and the crowd cheers. Once he was up, Rude argued with the referee that the exposed turnbuckle should have gotten Williams disqualified, but his argument fell on deaf ears. Junkyard Dog and David Von Erich both come to special seats at ringside to watch the final. The atmosphere for the last match is completely different than it has been for the rest of the tournament. There are no more villains. There is no more comedy. There are no more shortcuts. The crowd gives both men a long ovation as the two battered warriors come to the ring. Steve Williams from Colorado walks to the ring slowly, still feeling the effects of the long match against Rick Rude. Lex Luger from New York comes to the ring with a bandaged head to cover the reopened wound from his match against Scott Hall. The two stand in the center of the ring staring each other down. They each proceed cautiously when the bell rings, not sure what the other has left, and not even sure what they have left themselves. Gradually, Williams' fatigue begins to show. His movements are slower, but his toughness keeps him dangerous. Luger takes advantage and becomes more aggressive, hitting Williams with clotheslines and power slams. Williams fights back, reaching deep to deliver a belly-to-back suplex and nearly gaining a pinfall. Williams tried one final Oklahoma Stampede, but his shoulder gives out and he's unable to lift the almost 300-pound Luger. Lex lifts behind Dr. Death and, as the crowd rises, lifts him up into the torture rack. Williams refuses to submit, remaining in the hold for a full 30 seconds before finally falling unconscious. The referee calls for the bell, ending the match at 21 minutes and 37 seconds, and declares Lex Luger the winner. Luger eases Williams to the mat before crumpling to the mat himself, exhausted. The crowd gives both men a long ovation as they lay motionless in the ring. Luger finally sits up, has his hand raised by the referee, and accepts the 50 States Championship belt. David Von Erich and Junkyard Dog both come to ringside and shake Luger's hand as Williams regains consciousness and rises to his feet. Luger meets Williams in the middle of the ring and offers a handshake. Hesitating for a moment, Williams finally accepts the handshake before leaving the ring. And that is it. Buffalo, New York's Lex Luger is the 50 States Champion, leaving 49 other wrestlers behind him. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I have to admit, maybe I should have done a shorter tournament instead of taking on one that starts with 50 wrestlers, but it was cool to see how it played out. I certainly didn't think Lex Luger would come out the winner. Getting good images sometimes proved to be problematic, but it was fun to do. And if you want to see more like this, let me know. Otherwise, if you're new here, check out more videos from the links on the end screen. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, not necessarily in that order. And I will see you next time.